What's up guys, my name is Josh, and first of all, happy 4th of July. And to celebrate, I guess we have red, white, and blue, and that was a bad joke and not really planned. It just happened to be a happy coincidence that I happen to be doing a blue headphone, the only blue headphone I've ever done today, and today is that day. So anyways, happy 4th of July. If you're European, this is a little bit awkward. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into the bulk of this review here. So real quick disclaimer before we get started is that Dekoni did send me these to review. I do have to send them back. They have not asked, influenced, or paid for me to say anything good or bad about these headphones. So I received this from Dekoni. Right off the bat, I kind of want you to know a little bit of history with me and the T50s. Personally, stock T50s didn't really do it for me. I tried a couple of pads on them with the pads that I had when I had the T50s. Z actually sent me his T50s and he had Shure pads on them, and those I really liked. I found them really smooth and pleasant to listen to. And I also have the Argons. That review will be coming out soon, and now I also have the Dekoni Blues. Now an interesting thing, originally I thought it was just a cosmetic change as well as you get like 2 sets of pads with them, but I emailed the guy who sent this to me from Dekoni. I said, is there anything besides cosmetic changes in pads? Is there any difference from the stock T50s? There are some minor tweaks we did with Fostex, but the major points are baffling in pads. So they did change the baffling, but I can't really necessarily confirm exactly what they did as I don't have a stock T50 to compare to. Although I will say that these do obviously sound drastically different than stock T50s. I don't really need to compare to be able to tell you that. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the build of this. So this has 2 sets of pads. They have their velour pads, which are my preferred pad and what the majority of this review will be talking about. I'll talk about the sonic differences with the pads kind of near the end of the sound portion of this review. It does have, obviously a blue color. I think this is kind of hit or miss with people. I don't mind it. I like the cocky colors. I wish people would kind of go outside of the comfort zone of either like a metallic looking headphone or a black headphone and do more color stuff like this. It does have Dekoni branding at the top. The armbands, instead of being silver, are black, and this cable is no longer orange. Instead, it is black. Other than that, it comes with the stock cable and just okay box, but I don't really think box presentation is extremely important, although it is appreciated. But no carrying case or anything like that. Nothing really special comes with this. I do recommend a V-motor cable instead of the stock cable because it kinks up a lot and it's really long. So the power and the sensitivity for this are going to be rated at 50 ohms and a sensitivity of 92 decibels. And for headphones like this, I always want to make sure that you guys know that just because it's 50 ohms, which seems relatively easy to drive, that sensitivity is where this headphone is really going to kind of trick you. If you're not familiar with T50s, they do require a lot of power to play at decent listening levels. For this particular headphone, I am going to listen amplifier as absolutely necessary to get the full benefit of what this can do. Fola 2 couldn't power it. My little dot could kind of power it, but it's planar, so I don't really recommend tubes on it. And a Magni 3 seemed to handle it okay. I don't really have anything more powerful than a Magni 3 here right now, but I assume everything, Magni 3 and up would probably be fine. Okay, now let's talk about the sound. So my overall sound impressions are that these are very warm, they're very bassy, yet pretty perky. They have perky highs, they have perky mid-range, and they have great separation. Now let's talk about the nuances of the sound, starting with highs. Highs were actually the most disappointing part about this headphone. I found that the high presentation was a little bit weak, especially with like female vocals. They just felt kind of airy. They didn't really feel like they had a lot of quality or texture, and they felt a little bit recessed back into the background, and I don't really like that. I like better separation. I like better, let's call it depth to the female vocals, and these don't really give me that. The highs are never sibilant, they're not bright, but they do feel a little bit thin. They do feel a little bit, not necessarily recessed, that's not really the right term, but they feel like there's not quite that control of the highs that I would expect from a headphone at this price point. Now let's talk about the mid-range, and this is where things start to get good because it has great low mid-range performance. Honestly, really solid, really punchy, really thumpy, and it really makes you feel the music. It has a lot of like actual impact in your ears and you really feel everything. Male vocals or deeper female vocals are really kind of thick and beefy in a good way. Like they really have a lot of texture and detail and presence behind them, a lot of power, a lot lot of authority. Now the upper mid-range, it's still very good, but it is starting to move into that area in the high ranges where you're starting to feel like you're not quite getting the quality that you would want. Okay, now with the lows were very interesting to me because I felt like the lows were they're very impactful. They have a lot of depth, they have a lot of rumble, they have a lot of all-encompassing sound, if that makes any sense. They feel like they're coming from around you rather than like a point source. I feel like depending on what type of music you're listening to, that can be a good thing. On some headphones like HC600s, when you hear like a bass drum, it's like you can visualize the instrument, whereas you don't really just have this general sound of bass. But at the same time, for like electronic music or for like, you know, gaming for fun or something like that, that kind of all-encompassing bass can be a lot of fun. And that may be what you're looking for in your bass. Let's talk about separation, soundstage, and imaging, and then we'll talk about the pad change. The soundstage is not too intimate, it's not too far out, but the soundstage, it has a good ability to do vocal separation, especially with that lower mid-range, where you have a singer kind of right in your face, and then you have your kind of instruments in the background. It's able to separate that foreground from the background very, very well. I like it a lot. One note I will say about the imaging is that the imaging seemed to go over your head rather than through your head. I'm hoping that makes sense, but like if you have them, if like we're just gonna visualize sound starts here and, you know, just from, well, how would you see this? Left to right, right? So it would normally go here, and the sound sounds like it's kind of arching over your head rather than through your head. It was just a weird kind of sensation. I haven't heard that on too many other headphones. Okay, now let's talk about the pads. So stock, these come with the hybrid pads that come on these. And personally, I did not like the hybrid pads. I felt that the bass was very overwhelming. It was very boomy. Yes, it did hit lower, but it was a lot lower and a lot more substantial and more kind of overwhelming the rest of the music. I didn't really like that. I felt like the velour was better in pretty much every way, especially for any sort of like openness that you may want from these headphones, which really seemed to benefit vocals and the highs and the upper mid-range a little bit more on this headphone. And the velour seemed to really benefit vocals in that upper range that was kind of lacking in this headphone to begin with. Whereas the hybrid pads, I don't really recommend using those ones. And this is all preference. I mean, you may like them, you may like that really thick, punchy, hard bass, that may be what you're looking for. I just prefer a little bit, let's call it a cleaner sound. Everything just had a little bit more detail, a little bit more texture, and felt a little bit more open. And for my preference, the velour seemed to work a little bit better. Now, this kind of pad change discussion brings me into the conclusion of this. What are you really paying for when you get the Dekoni Blue over like the stock T50s, or if you went up a level to, let's say, Argons, for example? Well, I probably won't compare these directly to Argons because I feel like you're talking about different types of headphones. They're not chasing after the same goal, even though they do use the same stock headphone. But with this, what you're really paying for is two things. One is going to be pads from a company that has exceptional pads. Dekoni pads are awesome, and I have a few pairs of them that I'll be doing in an M1060 re-review type of thing in the future. But the pads are incredible, and you get two of them, and so you could kind of factor that into your equation. So you're paying for pads that you will probably most likely already be buying if you buy the stock T50s anyways. And on top of those pads, you're also getting kind of a unique color. Now, that may or may not be important to you. I think some people prefer that kind of limited feeling of certain headphones and other people don't. I personally am of the mindset of like, I don't really care that much. But with this headphone, you are getting much, much nicer pads that you're probably going to want to upgrade to from the stock T50s anyways. And that uniqueness and those pads are really what you're going to pay for here. Do I recommend it? To be honest, yes and no. I would say that it's a definite upgrade from the stock T50s. Like, by far, 100%, I can say that without a shadow of a doubt. It's very, very good. Is it better than other options at this price range? That one's a little bit harder. I will say, I haven't heard too many headphones in this price range that sound like this. So maybe you have something that sounds a little bit more open, maybe like a fully open back headphone, not something that kind of sounds semi-open like this. You know, and this might be a good complementing headphone. But I'm gonna leave that decision up to you. And if you do want to check these headphones out, there's a link in the description down below where you can go see them, as well as some other items like V-motor cable and stuff like that. All my recommended stuff. All right, guys, I think that's gonna wrap it up. Happy 4th of July. Stay safe out there tonight. Don't drink and drive. Don't do anything stupid. Don't set any fires, all that good stuff. I'll catch you guys in the next video.